Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we're going to talk about a story that a lot of people probably are still in the dark about because the media did a really good job at whitewashing what was really going on at Penn State and Sandusky. Okay, Jerry Sandusky was not alone in what he did, and the university helped cover it up because the truth of the matter is that it was involved in letting Sandusky pimp kids out through his Second Mile Foundation to large donors. And I'm going to show you the evidence for that. And it really upsets me that, even now, and when you look at the beginning of this, you're like, wow, that kind of hints at this when I wasn't aware. But more victims have come out against Jerry Sandusky. All right, and this is going to be a bit of a long video with a treat at the end for those that maybe have followed my work for a long time or that haven't followed my work and were unaware of how long I've really been doing this thing. All right, well, let's read this really carefully because it's important right before we get to the picture. Penn State University is investigating another alleged incident of sexual assault involving a former assistant football coach, Jerry Sandusky. The university confirmed to the news on Wednesday after an individual came forward earlier this week to say the disgraced coach had assaulted them. All right, so it's more than one, or they got it wrong there on campus sometime. It looks like victims, so I think it's several people between June 2000 and September 2010. So it's probably several incidents. Okay, a spokesperson told the Center Daily newspaper that they are following the correct reporting protocols and that they have no further comment. Let me explain why. All right? They say the allegations are vague, but looking forward to finding out what this is about, of course. Penn State has already paid more than $100 million. Did you know that? $100 million to more than 30 people. Now let's look at those numbers. Do you think all of those 30 people were just involved with Sandusky if the university was paying that out? And by the way, Jay Wright, thank you so much for that super chat. Says Soldiers of Truth. Here's the thing. When this started to break, the first guy that broke it, he broke it in, I believe it was April of 2011. It's a guy named Mark Madden, all right? Posted this in there. And, basically said that he was running a child prostitution ring, okay, to big donors, and that was the big thing. He went on a radio show and said that. You can check it out for yourself. Later on, Radar Online came out with a report where he was on a private plane with a Penn State donor and had abused two boys on that plane. Okay? This is high-level stuff. I saw Sandusky and Penn State booster abuse boys on plane. All this was out in 2011. And then in 2012, as you see, more and more information came out exactly how this was running. Media kept it very quiet. They still keep it very quiet. Now, if you don't think he had accomplices, and if you don't understand that sometimes the abused become abusers themselves, you have to understand it took till 2017 for Sandusky's son, who he was actually abusing, to be also charged with child sexual abuse. These rings are very real. And that's why I've been focusing a lot on the finders and whatnot. Now, to speak to the business end of this, okay, I want people to understand that his Second Mile Foundation was also one of the president's much promoted 1,000 Points of Light, okay, encouragements to the community. So if you don't know what that was George Herbert Walker Bush, vice president under Reagan, president preceding Clinton, Mr. CIA, head of the CIA at some point. By the way, Johnny the Fox, thank you very much for that super chat. Well, the Bush White House had something go on with that Franklin scandal. A lot of people want to call a hoax. But as the Finders documents come out and the evidence surrounding the Franklin cover-up and then the Franklin scandal, you can read that in both books. right? You need to read the John DeCamp book and then the Nick Bryant book. You see that it's actually very well documented, and there were high-level people that were involved in this. Okay, now here's the thing. I've been trying to expose this since 2011. Okay, you can see this right here. November 15th, 2011, Jason Burmis talks with Alex Jones, and we're going to look upon Alex Jones fondly today, because this, I think Jones did a really good job with the piece that I've dug out. Exactly, I see Dennis Hassard. This is before anybody knew that Dennis Hassard, who was the Speaker of the House during a lot of this abuse going on with Sandusky, by the way, he'll later be labeled a serial child molester by a judge. Okay? So I found a lot of this stuff, regarding the points of light or whatever here. But let's just do it. Let's listen to old school Alex Jones and a younger Jason Burmis just talk about this, guys.
Look them up for yourselves. Just Google CPS 5 times more likely to abuse children than any other group. You'll get the statistics from mainstream news, including Time Magazine, Newsweek. Okay, let's go to Jason Burmis now to have the floor and break down this tip of the iceberg Sandusky situation and why the system's so desperate to cover this up. Jason, good to have you here with us.
Thanks for having me, Alex. Let's roll it back to where you said the judge let him out on a $100,000 bond. She was heavily involved in the Second Mile Foundation, which this guy founded. Now, you bring it back to Mark Madden. Mark Madden actually broke this story back in April of this year, and nobody paid attention to it. In fact, he was laughed at, and he just kind of took it in stride. Now it breaks loose. He goes on a local talk radio show, a sports show, and talks about how this is the tip of the iceberg, and there are two prominent columnists working on the story of Sandusky and the Second Mile Foundation trafficking in children. And don't think it's not here, folks. In the UK, for instance, it broke that in July, they convicted a gentleman, 32 years old, Anthony Harrison, and he was trafficking in young girls within the United Kingdom.
And let's talk about this Anthony Harrison guy, because the details of the Anthony Harrison case you're going to hear right now are pretty unbelievable. And remember, right in the very beginning, Sandusky initially, when these charges were given, he was let out on a $100,000 bond by a judge, again, that was involved in his Second Mile Foundation. You see how the system's rigged out of the gates to try to protect these people? So let's continue.
And he only gets 20 years. What's with these light sentences?
By the way, tell him what he was trafficking them for.
For voodoo rituals, which is extremely bizarre. And it kind of parallels a case there, which was the first case they ever found, they said, in the United Kingdom, of voodoo ritual sacrifice, where a young 5-year-old was flown in from West Africa. He was paralyzed. He wasn't given an anesthetic. He was paralyzed through a drug, repeatedly raped, and then dismembered as all of his blood was drained out of him. Who are these people? And why do they have any power whatsoever to cover up these acts? We have to take notice of that. By now, this story should have broke. So I hope and pray that there are good journalists out there really willing to risk their skin, because we've had journalists come up dead in the past.
Before we get into the dead in the past, and we're about to get into Craig Spence and some of the Franklin scandal, but unfortunately, we didn't really have journalists dig into either of these cases, right? Sandusky, here we are. We're talking about this, what? This was in November of 2011. So 8 years later, we're finding out about $100 million+ in payouts to 30+ victims. Most people are unaware of the claims of donors abusing these people with Sandusky at all. They're unaware of the connection to the Bush's 1,000 Points of Light Foundation. All been covered up. You probably never heard about that UK trafficker who was trafficking young children for voodoo rituals, right? So in a lot of ways, we failed. I was talking about Epstein during these years as well. People wonder why I get so emotional and I'm so upset. It's because these are real issues that people don't take seriously.
If you look at the Franklin scandal, for instance, a guy named Craig Spence, he started his career as a journalist in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia for NBC. He becomes a Republican lobbyist and entangled in this scandal. and he's found dead in his hotel room in 1989, just I think it was days after the story breaks on the front of major newspapers with the credit card receipts of prominent people on the cover and within the story. So this is very important, folks. This really, we have to get beyond this church of football and this worship of Joe Pa and Paterno. And believe me, being in upstate New York, I'm only about 70 miles from Scranton, and I've lived in Philadelphia, and this guy is like a god even up here. I mean, people can't believe it. But the bottom line is...
Let me just stop it there. And unfortunately, that culture still exists. And to an extent, Paterno, after you looked at that investigation, really wasn't put to fault. He reported on this stuff. I'd say this, he didn't speak out to lose his job, right? Joe Pa, shut your mouth.
If you witness somebody raping a young boy in a shower, how is it that you are elevated to assistant coach? And how is the coach able to maintain his job for well over a decade? Well, you and I know the answer. Everything is compartmentalized. People go along to get along. And the fact of the matter is, this is going to sprawl out into some very prominent people.
Well, look, he wouldn't be reportedly, although these witnesses, raping people right there in the middle of the field house, which is a very public place for anybody that's played football. If folks don't know, it's coming and going all hours of the day. I mean, this just shows this was mainline. This is somebody obsessed with children. Have you seen the videos of him with high school students when he's, where he's grabbing on them? And
there's videos out there. I'm pretty sure that they are high school students. They're getting ready for the college football, and he's. Listen, where is this Alex Jones? Look how much more measured he is. You're never going to hear how all Democrats are Satanists. I don't think we're ever going to hear about leftists at all. Everything he might have thrown a little spice on it back then, but it was a lot more grounded in reality. Let's continue.
I mean, it looks like something out of. It's incredible. But Jason.
They set these foundations up, Alex, to prey on these young boys. I know you point this out again and again, but we have to be so aware of these supposed charitable organizations.
Remember Boys Town. Let's stop right there, because let's go back. You cover this. I cover it some in our Dark Secrets Inside Bohemian Grove. But to try to go over all the examples, it would take hours. But in Invisible Empire, by the way, that's on DVD at Infowars.com if folks want it, or if not, it's free on YouTube. The point is, get it out to everybody. You look at the psychology of the globalists and the crimes they're known for committing, the government drug dealing, the white slavery, the child kidnapping. We really look at their psychology in that film. So go back over that and the Jeff Gannon and the gay porn stars and all the things that are happening, all the things that are going on, Jason, because this is something that keeps happening over and over and over and over again. And even Richard Nixon talked about it. I mean, it's so frightening. So, please continue.
Absolutely, Alex. And it's such an important thing. We have to be aware of this. How can we let a predator class that preys on children make executive decisions that affect all of us and have really been raping us and this country for some time now? But let's go over it. This pedophile ring, which I discussed earlier, was headed by a guy named Larry King, not the Larry King from television, but this guy had literally sung the national anthem. I believe it was at the 1988 Republican convention. He was an up-and-comer in the game. And the reason he was an up-and-comer in the game is he was the main player and pimp for young boys and girls, where he would even bring them in for midnight tours of the White House. A lot of this is chronicled in both the Franklin cover-up and the Franklin scandal. If you want a 60-minute synopsis of this unbelievable tragedy that occurred in our country and is probably still occurring today, especially with cases like this, Alex.
And remember, when I'm talking about this is before, I believe it might even be before the first bust of Anthony Weiner. Maybe not, but I'm pretty sure it's absolutely before the Hassert thing being outed. All right? This is real. We were talking about this in 2011.
And you can check it out. It's called Conspiracy of Silence. It'll blow you away. This was actually made by the Discovery Channel, funded with $500,000. And Congress had an emergency session where they funded them not to air this. And the only reason we have this rough copy where scenes are missing and the role isn't really finished is because it was used in court cases. It's really just an unbelievable story. And what's even more unbelievable is it crept its way into Barney Frank, a current congressman in Massachusetts, still to this day, Alex, into his bedroom through a gentleman named Stephen Goby, who was his boyfriend slash prostitute slash pimp of other young gentlemen right there, and at the local Chevy Chase Elementary School, where the superintendent was aware of what was going on.
And, Jones is going to ask me a question about whether or not they were confirmed to be underage. Goby, who was supposedly running this thing, said, yes, there were teenage boys involved. That's what he alleged. I'd love, and if that's even really his name, I'd love to track him down and get an interview and really find out exactly what was going down there and how he had access to the school.
And just to be clear from memory, it's covered in the film, but I have the Washington Post, Washington Times. Some of the prostitutes were underage, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. When you look at the testimony of people like Troy Bonner, Paul Bonacci, these are 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old
Yeah,
kids.
but by the way, well, even younger, but I mean, going back, I was talking about Barney Frank specifically. We have the news clip on the news where they said, Frank got up and said, you investigate me, I'm going to release all the names, and it was shut down. And the way Nixon and others described it, you've got to at least just go to the parties where this is going on, not even be part of it, so they know you're compromised. I mean, it's like, I guess, some kind of gangs. I've heard of Mexican mafia, you got to kill an old lady or something to prove you're really evil. Or other groups, you got to kill a kid or whatever. And I guess with this New World Order, it's like a bunch of Nelly ninnies where you got to rape children to be part of their evil club. And, of course, you mentioned Larry King. He was convicted. I mean, this is just so amazing.
Streets today, Alex, he walks the streets today. How is it in this country in 2011 we let child rapists serve short terms and then go back and do it again?
Wait a minute, it's worse than
And by the way, we're almost in 2020, and the same things are happening.
that. Remember 5 years ago, there was 5,000 missing kids in Florida that CPS had taken? And it turned out the top 3 CPS people in the state were all convicted child rapists. This is not an accident.
And by the way, I'm seeing it in the comments. He is right. The president, Graham Spanier, he leaves after the scandal, and he's a CIA guy. So weird.
This is an army of evil.
Doesn't go to jail.
Absolutely. And it pains me to say again, these are the people a lot of people look up to, they think are moral, they want to be like. These are the worst of the worst in the predator class that would go after a child sexually and ritualistically in anything you believe. I can't believe another human being would want to bring harm on anybody unprovoked, let alone a young child. How could you live with yourself? You'd have to be soulless, Alex.
All right, let's shift gears. Catholic Church, every major country they're in, this is coming out, and cover-ups. Boy Scouts, 5,000 rapers covered up. I mean, it's every institution. They want to get into institutions because then they know the institutions will cover it up so their names don't get hurt. But in the end, that allows the scum to take over. Government, the military. We now learn about West Point and other things where there's sexual rituals at the higher levels. I mean, it really turns out, just like in ancient Rome, pervert guilds are in control. Where do you see this going with the whole situation at Pedophile Valley there? I mean, because, the head coach, the president, all of those board of governors, they all now, it's coming out new for now 18 years, some of them, this was going on. And people are saying, well, bring back, the coach. Those kids rioted, the college students calling for their God. So what if some kids got raped, by a degenerate, ugly old man? You know what? We need our football. I mean, it's just incredible.
It's absolutely despicable. And let's talk about another institution real quick, because you mentioned the military, you mentioned the Catholic Church, you've mentioned the Boy Scouts. And again, not all Boy Scouts, not all Catholics, they're not all bad people. But predators use these modes, these organizations, again, to prey on these young boys. Well, I watched a clip today from, I believe it was 60 Minutes, a mainline CBS News program, and they were talking to Corey Feldman, famed childhood actor. And they said, what's the biggest problem in Hollywood today to him? He goes, honestly, he's like, the pedophilia. He's like, it's not talked about. It's widespread. It was done to me. It was done to Corey Haim. And, he raps off all these people. And he's like, the guy that did it to me, I guarantee he's going to watch this interview and he's going to sit there and smile and know he's going to get away with it, because these guys have gotten away with it for so long.
And let's just talk about Corey Feldman. He says he's almost done with his film. And finally, he's going to name those names. Again, we're 8 years after this.
And these are the heads of our entertainment industry as well, literally feeding us the propaganda that we consume every day, Alex.
And pedophiles may be 0.5% of the population, and they're trying to now sexualize children, just like they're selling us on torture, TSA, groping children. They're trying to change our political and social atmosphere into their cesspool, and they're sexualizing the children as young as 5, 6, 7, trying to sell outfits to little girls that look like a prostitute's outfit. I mean, it is scientifically done to destroy our society, and it's such a tiny group, but they're the group willing to carpet bomb villages of children, to use DU worldwide. They're the groups willing to genetically engineer the crops to sterilize the population. And, the way investigative journalist, former federal criminal investigator Greg Pallas put it, and he's right, this is just a byproduct of pedophilia. These people are so wicked in the ruling class across the political spectrum worldwide for wars, stealing pension funds, evil, that it's a bunch of evil people competing with each other to take over. So, of course, the most evil are going to be in positions of power. And Pallas said the pedophilia thing is just a side deal, that they're all there. Quite frankly, from my research, as bad as it is, they're just raping some children. As you pointed out, they're butchering them. The snuff films that have come out of Europe that have been in the foreign press where they rape little toddlers and then blow their heads off. I mean, folks, this is in the New World Order. And if they can't get your kids, they'll give them a Gardasil shot to hammer their brain. You understand, folks? They're not playing games. These are literal demons directly out of a Hellraiser vortex. Okay, and they're walking around in suits and ties. They've almost converted the police over to being their operatives. They're taking over every institution. Boy Scouts, good organization, being taken over. And they must be met, they must be faced. Jason, people can learn more by watching Invisible Empire. We've also had your Twitter up there for folks. Thank you so much. Look forward to talking to you as this continues to unfold. 60-second final comments on any other facets we haven't covered.
Well, I just want people to be encouraged to pursue this story. It's not about Joe Paterno. It's not about football. It's about a callboy ring that a predator set up through a charitable organization and the cronyism that's probably going to get this guy off in the long run. Remember, the judge that put him on bond worked for and with the foundation. We cannot allow justice not to be served in this case, folks.
So, yeah, there it is. Fonder Times with Alex Jones. If you like this video, this throwback video, I do a lot. You can check out all my documentary films, by the way, in the playlist section right here. Go over to the playlist section, you scroll right down, all of them. We got Shade the Motion Picture, we got Invisible Empire, New World Order Defined, which we referenced many times, Fabled Enemies, and Loose Change Final Cut. By the way, I do it 3 to 7 times a day, so make sure you're thumbing the video up, you're sharing them with people. If you missed my Halloween costume, Randy Marsh, Integrity Farms, taking out Winnie the Pooh, Piglet watching. I think I'm a funny guy. I don't know. After all that dark video, I figure I'd give you a chuckle. And if you like what I do, trying to balance reality with humor, we're not going left or right. Notice, again, Jones never said that Democrats were Satanists and it wasn't about the left at all. It was a happier time then when we really went after the predator class. I love you guys. I'm always going to keep it real with you, and hopefully I'll see you on the flip side.